You put a bunch of like babies on this screen and you're like, and I'm like, why are you not an astronaut? Don't you know you can change the world? Off. God.
Nancy
Sorry.
punctuated that one, didn't you? And then she was like, "Oh no, honey, people do that for fun." And I was like, "Welcome to another conversation with the Apostate Sisters. I'm Patti, and I make this podcast with my sister Nancy. We grew up in a doomsday cult called the Worldwide Church of God. We're also nerdy about history and culture, but critical of religion. So get ready to get mad or to nod your head in agreement. This episode, we're returning to our series on bodily autonomy as we embark on the topic of raising children.
Or to not have children.
I have kids, and Nancy doesn't, and we're aware of the fact that the cult greatly affected us, as well as our stint in evangelicalism. So our goal is to expose the harm and to liberate the cult kids of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Let's get started.
Okay, well, I don't know how you wanted to kick this off, Pats, but okay, you have children and I do not. I have never had the slightest shred of interest. The thought just, I have never wanted kids. Never. Not even in the slightest bit. So how is it that you, I guess, since you were young, you've always known you've wanted children. So how did that process go for you? Did you feel like you actually did make the choice to have children, or do you feel like it was just placed upon you, maybe by the church, that it was just expected of you, like as a woman, to bear children?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question and probably is the place to start because um, I think I got a dual message growing up. I got the church and home message, which was babies and motherhood and wifeliness as what my job was for the rest of my life. Um, but I think because I was in a very progressive public school, I think I also got the messaging that it was important for me to not just do that, right? It was important for me, this was feminism of the 80s in California, right? That it was going to be important for me to have a job. And so my life
Mhm.
to me by my teachers was talked about in terms of the job I would have one day. And I was a kid that got good grades. And so that all seemed to make sense. It seemed like I was on track for that, right? Because I was good at school. What I was good at was
You
obedience, but that's okay.
you were
Um,
very much the good daughter. Yay!
I mean, I still am. I'm the one that married a white person.
A white evangelical Christian, Pats. I mean,
That's
you went
true. I did.
full stop on that. You played
Hmm.
by all the rules.
I was trying to learn the rules. It seemed like that was the path laid out for me. But I don't want to say it like in terms of I didn't want to have kids because I did. Like whether I would have thought of that had the choice been truly presented to me as a choice or not, I don't know.
Hmm.
But that was presented to me as kind of the main thrust of what my grown-up female life would be and I wasn't opposed to it. Um, I I did want to have kids. I remember in high school at one point, I was at a math and science summer camp doing like blood typing and something like that. And I remember at that age, I wanted 5 children. I thought,
Oh God, five?
why? I have no idea, but that sounded like the right thing. So maybe that was somehow my teenage brain wanting to one up our parents who had four. I don't know.
Oh God.
Yeah, yeah. So that would have been late high school. And then throughout the course of college, I think I kind of shifted that a little bit. And I think I saw the world more realistically. Um, Even in terms of, like I bought a tiny little house in Bloomington, Minnesota when I was 23 and tried
Hmm.
to learn how to run a home as a single person. I bought that house. And like it became very clear to me watching my colleagues at the design firm I was working at that life with kids while being a working mother sucked ass. Like, you know, And so, like, I kept my desire to have children, but that thought of I'm going to be, I'm going to do both, like I was taught in California in the 80s in public school and be a boss bitch about it. Like, well, I guess the boss bitch part didn't really come through in school, but it was like I thought that I could do both. And I think a lot of women do. And I give them a hell of a lot of credit for doing that. Because I know we watched our mom stay home with us the whole time. And I
Yep.
felt like I thought that was a problem for her because after 30 years, well, she did it for 30 years instead of like 5. But after 30 years at home, she thought she could just go walk right back into accounts payable and that it would work the
Uh-huh.
same way it did in the 70s. Like, holy fuck, woman, no. And so she like, I mean, I would say this is the church too, but she like lost her touch with how the world works in reality. Like the world had gone from ledgers to computers, and she like didn't realize that would have been the case. So although I decided in the end to use the bit of privilege I had to be a stay-at-home parent to my kids, I did take that lesson from her that I didn't want to finish my time as a stay-at-home parent and be like, holy shit, I have no idea how to exist in this world anymore.
Hmm.
So I don't know that I did that perfectly, but I think I kept up my skills and my connection to the world a little differently. Now, granted, I had the internet, which she didn't have for doing that. So yeah, there's like so many thoughts and emotions from the decades that went into my decision to have kids. And then it's like since I had kids, I have a 15-year-old and a 13-year-old. It's like I have had to grapple with the fact that like this is such a hard thing and I wanted it so bad. And I think there's a lot of parents who are just like, well, I have to pretend this is perfect. It's like so worth the struggle. And like I would say that too, but like holy fuck, it's hard being
Yeah.
a parent trying to like and I'm trying to look at the world, this world that I was taught to hate, that now I feel differently about, but maybe don't know enough about also. I don't know about that. Does any of us know enough about the world? Sorry, I'm completely rambling at you now. Um,
No, it's good. Keep going.
but it was like I've definitely had times of like, why did I do that? Like, especially, when things got a little tougher in our world in 2016 or a little scarier than they were looking before that, I felt sorry. Like, sorry, guys. Thought I was bringing you into something pretty nice.
I mean, doesn't every parent worry about that?
I don't know. Do
Even
they?
have family members that didn't have kids because they just thought, I mean, they're not Christian or anything, so they're not worried about the whole fallen world concept, but they just looked around at the world and they really didn't like what they saw, and they're like, why would we bring children into this? Which I get where they're coming from. And then on the other hand, you could say, well, we're having children, but what if our children do make a difference in the world? One of them might. I guess the same for me to like, why do I enjoy traveling around the world so much, learning about other people and other cultures? Well, it's a desire of mine. I'm drawn to things like that. Some people, like, they love nurturing little people, having little thems roaming around.
Yeah. I mean, it's only the last, what, 50 years that women have truly been able to say, yes, I do want to have a child now. No, I don't want to have a child.
That's
I,
true. That's
I
true.
mean, I don't think we fully, you and me, or maybe a lot of women our age, like, do we really understand? Do we really understand what the world was like before women had more rights and before birth control existed? Like, I don't think we understand, Nancy.
Hmm.
Like, you would not be able to say, "Oh, I don't want kids." It's like I,
I
I
know.
I almost imagine this world of women who are saddled with a broken body and 10 children that they didn't want. I, oh my God. And then
Yeah.
to realize that, like, in that world, women who didn't have children were looked down upon as
Still are.
though they were broken. Well, yeah.
Yeah,
And when
still
I
are.
say broken for the woman with 10 children, I mean literally because her fucking body has gone through that over and over and over. Like, I
Right.
might end up being more negative on all of this, like when I'm looking at this from the perspective of how and why women landed themselves in a submissive role of wife and mother.
The thing that I get asked the most, not so much anymore, because now I'm in my 40s. I mean, like, hey, you know, the jig is up. I mean, like, when I said I didn't want kids, I meant it. And now I'm in my 40s. My husband's had a vasectomy. Yeah, of course I'm not fucking having kids like I initially said. I knew myself. But one thing I got told the most was that I would regret it or that I would change my mind when I got older. That's probably the most that I received was you're going to change your mind when you get older. Like, I, so what if I do? Like, like what's it to you? Like, I'm over here like, what the fuck do you care whether I have kids or not? I never understood. Like, okay, so great, you have kids. Why do you care whether I have one or not? It kind of goes back to like, oh, I didn't get invited to anything in church socials when I was single. I was like seen as the enemy being a single female. But the moment I got a boyfriend, I was invited to everything. It's like I'm figured out. I'm in the club now, right? You have children. You're in the mom's club. You get it, right? And I'm not in that club. And so when people ask me, why did I choose not to have children? I really didn't choose not to. I feel like the question to me is as strange as asking, and I know I've used this analogy before, but like you may as well ask me, why did I choose not to become, you know, an astronaut? Because it's not something I wanted, so I didn't pursue it. I don't think there's anything more plain than that. That'd be like if you want to be a doctor, you don't need any explanation. You pursue being a doctor, right? Like then maybe you can say, well, why did you choose to be a doctor? Great. You can list all the things that maybe interest you about being a doctor. But why do I have to explain why I'm not interested in that or interested in that? I don't understand. To me, it's kind of like, well, why don't I ask you why you had children, right? Because somebody has to make the choice to have children, not the choice not to. And the option is there if you want it. If someone has the desire, and I never had a shred of desire, and I
But
knew
that's the
that
shift. That's the shift, Nancy. That is the shift. It used to, so now we say it's the default. You're correct. It's kind of the default that you're not going to have children unless you decide to, because we have autonomy over that now with our contraceptives and stuff. But we have to recognize that's an entire flip, like for humans, because the
Mhm,
default for most of human history was if you're a human, like you're probably going to have sex because we have biological hormones and chemicals that make us
mhm,
want to do that. And if your bodies do that, you'll probably do it. And the natural consequence of that was children. And so to have children was absolutely the default, right? So, and it was like an odd thing when that didn't happen. And so you're not wrong in what you're saying that the default is that there aren't children and you have to actually do something to do that. Well, yes,
mhm,
but what I'm saying is it was such a part of biology that we have now interrupted with contraception
mhm,
that no wonder we're having a hard time with that, right? Like it
mhm,
was the default.
mhm. And there's asexual people out there too.
Well,
Have this
exactly.
granny. She is asexual, as she has it listed on her social media. She's asexual. Like there are some people that are not interested in sex whatsoever, but maybe they do have a desire to have kids, you know? I don't know how that works, but I'm just saying, like, there's so many different options there. To me, it just kind of seems rude for someone to even ask the question, like, well, why did you choose not to have kids? Or, like, does anybody ask, why did you choose to have children? No. People just have children, you know, it's so common. But to me, it just
Yeah.
seems like some people find it so odd that some people don't. Like, well, we don't know if someone's going through something and they're infertile and they can't have children at all. Isn't that just a disrespectful, like painful thing that are maybe bringing up? Well, why the fuck do you care
Yes.
whether I have kids or not?
I've read so many stories from women who've been hurt by that, where they wanted kids, tried for years, and then people give them that crap. Like, and the reasons that people come up to others, and well, and I think it's especially pervasive in church environments, right? Because this is
Mhm.
a high control environment, and controlling our gendered interactions, including raising children or birthing children, is obviously a part of that. Um, but I think it's a discomfort. I think that not everyone is comfortable with what I said earlier, which is that, like, holy shit, why did I do this? Raising kids is so fucking hard, and holy
Yeah.
shit, the world is fucked up. I'm having to raise them in it. Like, what the fuck? Why did I do that? This is
Mhm.
horseshit. Maybe people should stop having kids. Like, I would be fine saying that. Obviously, I love my kids and would still do anything for them, and I'm committed to that. But I think people feel like they're not allowed to say that, to say how hard it is, to say they wish they hadn't, to say, to say all those things. It's like looked down upon because it's held up as a cultural value that women are supposed to be good mothers, right?
Yeah.
And so it reinforces that, like it's someone being triggered of, like, it's I don't want them to say that they don't want kids, because then that means I had a choice, and then that makes me mad that I did it anyway.
Hmm.
So it's a little bit misery loves company, right? Like, if I can convince you to do it too, then it's not so bad that I chose to do it.
Yeah.
Like, 'cause then
That makes
everyone just
sense.
did it, and
Yeah.
that's just
That
where I
makes
have to
sense.
be. Yeah,
Right.
right, right.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure
it's
there's a lot
yeah,
of
it's
parents.
misery loves company. That's the one I just keep
Yeah.
coming to. Yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot of parents that feel like they can't complain about how hard it is to raise children because then they'll feel like they're, I don't know, insulting their own life choices or insulting their children and their family life. And this whole, well, count your blessings, you know, like things could be worse. And like, no, I imagine it is hard. I can't. Pat, sometimes I don't even know where my day goes, and all I've done is like make two meals from scratch. It's like noon or 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm like, what did I get done? I've been chopping vegetables and shit for the last 2 hours. And like I can't imagine. It's like no wonder we have resorted to things like, fast food and individually wrapped hot dogs and all that kind of stuff. It is hard.
It's not even getting into the financial aspect of it, which
Right.
puts so much more pressure.
Hmm.
Like, I know this is about child rearing and stuff, but man, you cannot pull apart these things that are keeping people down.
I know I use Sex and the City references all the time, but it was the second movie, I believe, where they go to Abu Dhabi and Miranda and Charlotte are just having this beautiful moment at the bar in their hotel. Um, just talking about their struggles with motherhood. And Charlotte's just like, I feel so bad. Sometimes I just let my child scream. Isn't that awful? Like she needs like a sanity check. And she says, I have full-time help. How do the women without help do it? And they just have this really nice little moment just to be able just to get the frustrations out. And I know women is it's not just gender specific for women, but I know we especially just see in a general sense seem to need to just get our emotions out, our aggressions out, just talk to each other and say, "Hey, you're not alone. I can relate to what you're saying. This is hard." If I babysit someone's kids, like I feel exhausted after like an hour. It's just like, "Yeah, you're fun, but now I want to give you back, you little shit."
This is maybe the moment also to, mention that like while it's great that you and I as sisters that both experienced WCG and evangelicalism in our own way, I had kids and I did it in kind of a unique way in the ways I raised my kids, and you didn't have kids, but I had a partner to help me with the kiddos.
Hmm.
I wasn't a single parent in that effort. And I just want to like really take note that like when I'm speaking about my experiences with this, like it's coming only from my perspective, right? Like we had enough privilege that I was able to be home with them and do educational activities in the way that I wanted.
Yeah.
I didn't have to worry about how am I going to get milk on my table and that sort of thing. So like I had enough privilege for that. It wasn't extravagant, but that's okay. Like I recognize that my experience had a lot more freedoms in that way, and I'm a woman, and so I was fulfilling this role in a way that society expected, right? So if you go outside of either of those things, you recognize like how much freaking harder. I say it's hard and I had all of that going for me. But then like think about people who are single parenting. If they're single parenting, no matter their gender, right? Like that is so hard to
Yeah.
have only one parent involved in all of that. Like no matter how many daycares and things you have involved in your life, like that is hard. If everything's on just you, like shout out to all the single parents out there. Like,
Mm.
I don't know shit compared to you. And that is what I know to be true.
Yeah. Or
And
someone
I
who had a partner and lost them. It happens.
Well, right. Or
No,
like
it's
think
like,
about if it's a man, right? Like a single dad raising kids
yeah,
because it's all the everything that comes with it being a single parent, but then you've additionally got society's judgment on that, assumptions, like probably a lot of assumptions that he's not going to know what the fuck he's doing because he's a dude. Like there's just so many layers of
mhm,
shit that are conditioning from our growing up in a fundamentalist situation to the evangelical way of looking at things. That means all of those ways of thinking absolutely impacted how we raised our kids
yeah,
and how all of us raise our kids. And by the way, when we raise children, those children grow up and like they're the people in a few years. So, like, how we raise them kind of matters. If we're raising them to know that they don't matter, like if they grow up thinking like no one's really paying attention to me, they're just trying to shove me through this gauntlet I'm supposed to run as a human. I don't know what kind of adults are they going to be? Like people make up the world, and children are people. I know we like to pretend they're like pre-people, but they're people and they make up the world.
yeah.
And that idea was and still is everything that informs my particular brand of child rearing.
You think a lot of
Yeah.
parents just constantly question whether they're doing the right thing or not.
Yes,
Gotta
yes,
be
I do.
extremely hard.
I think most very good parents are walking through their day thinking they're fucking it up.
I
Yep.
would. I mean, every day I'd be like, I'm fucking this person up. Like I'm not trying to, but holy shit. How many times have I said that I wish I had you as a mom?
Yeah, I could never get that idea out of my head. Like, I maybe it's because it's like a backlash to my childhood where I felt like everything was controlled and I had to do things in a certain way. Although looking back, like we had a fair amount of creative freedom and things. We just didn't have a lot of mental freedom.
I don't think we had any.
I don't know. I can't look back and think we had it bad in that aspect. Like, certainly the mental abuse of being taught that there's this awful deity and we have to obey these rules, like, definitely overshadows some of what I would say was otherwise quite a lot of free playtime.
I struggle with any positive memories from childhood, so I don't know if that contributed to me just not having any interest in having children, or I just biologically I'm just not wired that way. Just like I can't convince myself that a God exists. They fall in the same
Maybe
category. If they
that
fall in the same category to me, if somebody is asking me, why don't you believe in a God? Well, that's a weird fucking question. The question should be, why do you believe in a God? I am at the default setting over here. Like I need a reason to believe in God. I need a reason to have children, and I never found my reason to have them.
good. And I think in a world that functions as it ought, that's how it should be. Wouldn't we have a world full of a lot happier, healthier, more whole people if only the people who really wanted that very important job of parent did it?
Yeah.
You know, like,
Like pushing people to have children when they don't want to. Oh, that's so dangerous in my opinion. Even some people tell me, they try to be encouraging. Oh, but you'd be such a good mom and you would have such cute babies with Suman. Great. Okay. I don't care. It's not something that I want. And even Suman, they say, "Oh, he would be such a good dad. He's so sweet and lovable around kids. He's so great with kids." I get it. Me? I'm over here hi, awkwardly. What do you want? What do you need? I'm busy. I'm sorry, I'm that person. I'm kind of a bitch like that. I don't know how to react around kids. And I think I had a hard time growing into an adult. And so I didn't even have time to wonder about like bringing more people into this world. I was trying to become a person myself. I was trying to find myself. I'm like, how can I possibly fucking bring children into this world when I feel like I don't know shit? I feel like I don't need any reason other than I never wanted kids. Why would anyone question it? Again, I'm old enough now, at least, that people leave me alone about that. But it used to be constant, Pats, where people are just like, why would you not pass on children? Like, because I don't fucking want to. Why are you not an astronaut? Don't you know you can change the world? Fuck off. God.
Nancy
Sorry.
punctuated that one, didn't you?
Well, it just pisses me off. I got so sick of it.
Well,
Just
can
like
I?
I'm just never enough with my own decision. And I've been very strong-willed, pets. I have been very strong-willed my whole life. Whether I held those emotions in or not, I stuck to what I believed and what I didn't believe. There was a very short time in my life where I actually pretended, and those were my evangelical days. Other than that, if I believed something that I wasn't really comfortable releasing with the world for obvious reasons, I would just shut the fuck up. Be like, I'm just not going to say anything. Like, mom and dad never pushed us to have kids. I don't remember that at all. But again, they thought the world
Okay.
was going to end. So they didn't,
Yes.
yeah, they thought the world was going to end.
We have to talk about that.
Yeah,
Okay.
what?
Well, what, I was saying in high school I wanted like 5 kids. Why did
Ugh.
I? Like, maybe by high school it was clear to me that this doomsday thing they'd been promising would happen in 3 years ever since I was 8 years old,
Yep.
wasn't. And so like maybe I just let that go somehow in my head. But when we were
That's how it
little,
works.
but when we were little, it wouldn't have been on the table for me. Like, I desperately wanted kids when I was little because I thought I wasn't gonna get to have them. I thought I wasn't gonna grow up.
Oh,
Like, I remember at 8 years old wanting to wear nylon so bad, just wanting to be grown up so bad because I thought I wasn't
yes.
gonna get to be, so I gotta do it as fast as I can. Hoping, like, I remember bargaining with the universe or God or whatever, like, okay, maybe can I just get old enough to have sex? Like,
Hmm.
so, I mean, I thought I wasn't gonna grow up, even though I like dreamed about it. And so the thing that I wanted to get to about that is if I, as a kid, thought I wasn't going to have kids
Hmm.
because of what I was taught, our parents were the ones indoctrinated into the cult,
Hmm.
being told, here comes doomsday, right?
Yep.
Why the fuck did they decide to have kids?
Good question.
Literally,
Good
there's
fucking
passages
question.
in, right? Literally in the Bible, there's passages about like, woe to the women who are pregnant and nursing, kind of. I forget the exact words, but it's
What?
like, oh, it's gonna be so hard for those people with babies and for the children in those days because the tribulation will fucking suck. And so it's like, why, if you really thought that, why did you keep making more babies? Did they really think it then? I think maybe not.
Did they want
Well,
three children? And I know the fourth was an accident. Accident.
yeah.
You. Um, yeah.
You
So,
know,
but
that was when I learned that people had sex for fun, right? Um,
I don't know when I learned people had sex for fun,
it
but when
was
I found out our parents still did it, I was so disgusted.
no, it was because mom got pregnant with our littlest sibling.
Hmm.
I was 8, and she said it was an accident because I thought they were done at 3. Because dad had this thing, he would be like, eeny, meeny, miny, and no mo. And he was very proud that he could say that. And then Mo
Yep.
came along. Um, and so, so I was like, well, wait, mom, an accident? Like,
Oh, that's when
cause,
you.
cause I knew, like, I knew that, right? Like I knew, I knew what went where. But I was like, if it's an accident, like, did did daddy roll over on you in the middle of the night? You know, I'm like, it just slipped in, I guess.
Hmm.
I don't know. And then she was like, oh no, honey, people do that for fun. And I was like, and my world changed. So
Oh, okay.
if you think the end of the world is coming, why do you keep having kids? I just don't get it.
More souls for God's kingdom.
Well, there you go. I suppose you could get to a quiverful thing. Yeah. I will say by the time I was newly married and in an evangelical church, it wasn't a quiverful movement kind of thing, but the pastor definitely thought he was being funny when he told all the young couples to make some babies to grow the church numbers.
Holy shit, disgusting. You.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
mean, isn't it
It's
kind of
just
like
one of those things that sounds funny and cute if you're inside a church, and from outside it, you're like, "Ee, yikes."
it's kind of like when people get into bad relationships and all your friends on the outside can see what's going on, but that person can't. You know, not
Hmm.
until they maybe get out of it.
People put up with a lot of shit for a long time because they think they have to. I
I'm
don't want
sorry.
to walk away here from the childless by choice discussion because, like, I actually think that it's a really overlooked uh, role in society. And I want to honor the fuck out of the aunties and honorary aunties in the world, right?
Yay.
Yes.
Mhm.
And this is definitely inclusive of all genders. It can be honorary, whoever. But I think the people who decide not to have children,
Mhm.
um, well, I have encountered some really wonderful people who decided not to have children, or through the course of life, it didn't happen that way, but they have chosen to invest their lives into children. Like the older woman, the honorary auntie position, I think is so important.
Yeah.
I have to calm down because I'm going to get real upset about this one. Like to your point, Nancy, talking about how people would come for you for so long of like, oh, you'll change your mind and have kids. Why don't you have kids yet? You
Mhm.
know, I I get it. I do think people are self-soothing when they do that to people without kids, but I think we need to really embrace the childless woman stereotype We've had, what is it, the childless cat lady meme go around recently. But I will
Yep.
say, those childless cat ladies, whether they have cats or not, I have seen them fill the role of trusted, God, it's getting me, of a trusted older female.
Yes.
And I have found that so valuable. Like, I have two daughters, but I
Hmm.
also have several friends who never had children, including you, Nancy.
Yep.
Um, and what I find about that is those honorary aunties and actual aunties,
Just
they
blood related.
provide, it's fine. Yeah, that's true. Good point. Well,
Yeah.
whatever. We'll just say aunties then. So, what I find is that those aunties then act as a really critical female figure uh, in multiple families' lives, right? So, like, my dearest friend from college, she has kept up with my kids and she has watched them grow. She has sent them packages of random crap from Goodwill. She has bought them, like, well, she's bought them things, but she also shows up and she's available to them by text. And it's like I knew that my kids needed more than me as
Yeah.
their role model, like yes, they have teachers and all of that stuff too, but I feel like it's so valuable that they have these um other older women that they can turn to,
Yeah.
because they're not going to want to ask me everything, which is
Hmm.
fine. Um, and so
But hopefully they
that,
feel comfortable to do so, though, Pats. You
well,
and I
right.
growing up, we didn't feel comfortable talking to our mother about anything because chances are we were doing something wrong or questionable, and we would probably get yelled at or spanked. So I never went to her with anything. I just, whatever I was feeling, there it went. So at least your daughters know they can come to you. And if they, for whatever reason, don't feel like they can come to you with something, yes, I'm available. Your friends are available. And
Yes, and
hopefully they
I
know
know
that.
that, and they know that.
Yeah. And there just
So,
might be a topic that maybe myself or one of your other friends can address more. Kind of like when one child was having, a problem with the other being a bitch. I'll just say it. Being sort of a bully. Kids do that. And can I use the reference of like, yeah, you were kind of a bully to me at times. But again, goes back to the whole like you were dealing with your emotions too. They had no place to go except an easy target, which was me, who was trying desperately to be like friends with her older sister because I thought you were the coolest person in the world, yeah. Trying to be like you, and you were wanting nothing to do with your old pissant sister. Nah, go away.
I'm sorry, Nancy.
No,
Okay,
no,
well, I'll
stop
tell you.
apologize. It's funny now.
Well, that's
But,
good.
your daughters came to me asking about this and say, well, you actually told her to go to me because you're like, well, maybe we were in a similar situation as kids, and maybe she can address that better. It's
I just
very
want to
sweet.
like really shout out and love on all of the honorary aunties and honorary uncles and honorary everybody who steps in where there's kids who need people.
It takes a tribe to maybe raise kids, It's not easy. They learn from everybody. Whether it's good or bad, they learn
Well,
from everyone.
yeah. You wouldn't be able to stop them learning from everybody.
Hmm.
Well, and that's why it's worth everybody around us knowing good things, knowing true things, knowing how to interact in a healthy way. Like, all of us build the whole thing.
Well, it used to be kind of that way, right? Tribalism, like it took the whole tribe to raise the little ones. Everyone helped out, you know?
Yeah, what was that from the 90s? The idea that it takes a village. And I mean, we know that. We like to think, oh, I raised my kids myself and no one else. Like, hello, they went to school. Hello. They like played with the neighborhood kids, had interactions everywhere. Like, kids are sponges. They're picking up stuff from everywhere. And
Yeah.
I mean, that is understood by fundamentalists, right? Like, this is why you have kids being hidden away in yucky little Christian schools because then they
Ugh.
know that they won't pick up all the things that they would naturally pick up if they, interacted in the society in which they live.
Which tells me these churches are very insecure in the God they believe in.
Yep.
What,
Yep.
you're
And they're
worried that someone's going to tack logic to them and turn away from your God? You don't have any faith in your God, then, do you?
exactly. I mean, okay, so I'm looking at the Plain Truth, which was the Worldwide Church of God's monthly magazine that
Hmm.
went out, and they did cover child rearing, and they called it that. Editing Patti here. As we read from this 1984 article from the Plain Truth about child rearing, it's important to notice that this publication was the public face of the Worldwide Church of God. The church also put out a booklet by the same name as far back as the days when Garner Ted was involved. But by the time this issue was written, the message was toned down compared to the more punitive, controlling, and destructive teachings shared within the inner church. We don't want to overlook the real harm caused by the church teachings or the lived experiences of cult members. So look for an upcoming episode where we engage with the church's more harmful doctrines on parenting, as well as the abuse it condoned and ignored. Thank you for understanding that this Plain Truth reading does not cover the full impact of the harmful child-rearing teachings of Herbert W. Armstrong and the Worldwide Church of God. I think I'm just going to read this because it might actually be really enlightening to see what our parents were taking in about parenting from the Plain Truth magazine.
Yeah,
I
let's do
actually
it
don't
because,
think it's all bad.
well, let's read it. I don't entirely disagree with everything that Armstrong said. He has occasional pretty decent points in some of his stuff, which
Well,
is
right.
how he appeals to a wider audience.
Yeah, he was somewhat no nonsense and very practical in the things he put forth, which probably got a lot of people brought in because they're like, oh, this is like about real life. This actually makes sense. It's logical thinking. And then he tucked in the whole, you know, religion part. So,
Yep, as a control tactic.
so I will say, I think Armstrong really advocated for parents to spend time with their children. And so, that I'm gonna say I agree with, and I feel like that definitely does help. But, that's ignoring the context of a world that requires both parents to be punching a clock for at least 40 hours, if not side jobs too, just to keep meeting their kids' most basic needs. And so the admonition to spend more time with them is like, okay, and we'll all starve, like these are these admonitions of high control environments just don't take into account people's lived experience, and I find that so problematic.
Yeah.
So this is October 1984 of the Plain Truth magazine. So this is not original WCG teaching. This is like the final iteration, the most progressive and modern version of the Worldwide Church of God parenting talk.
Mhm.
Okay.
And it was 2 years before Armstrong died, too.
Yep. Yep. So this is said to have been written by him.
Well, he stopped writing shit
I
as
know.
he
He's
got
like
closer.
93 at this point or something.
Yeah.
All right. So the article says many parents today really do try to provide the best for their children. They want to give them happiness and security. They consequently spend their time and energy in the acquisition of material possessions. Little time or energy, however, is spent to provide for the family's spiritual and emotional needs. I'll just point out him, speaking against material possessions while also owning everything on Millionaire's Row, but okay, it's fine.
Yes.
Do you know why children are so inclined to learn from television, whether for good or bad? Because the television set is never too busy to talk to children. It never brushes them aside while it does household chores or becomes involved in other pursuits. You see how he was needling the mother for not paying attention right there?
Hmm. Mhm.
Mhm. Television programming goes to considerable lengths to attract and hold the attention of youngsters, and it succeeds. Well, yeah, he's not wrong about that. And that's an interesting point, actually. Like, what do kids want? Kids want to tell you things. Kids want to ask you questions. Like, what do kids want? They want a face. They
Hmm.
want somebody to interact with. That is like most kids anyway. That is what they want. So, gosh, I mean, that probably is why we're all like phone in our face even now. We love to interact.
Hmm. We're
You
social
know, it
creatures.
we are. And then when we figured out we could have a tiny little device that dings and makes little symbols and it makes our brain go boing, 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 then yeah, kind of sticks with us.
You're way over on the other side of the US, and I can talk to you just like this. I can
Hmm.
do the same with my in-laws over in India using the same device. It's pretty amazing, actually.
Totally wild. Well,
Yeah.
and when we were babies, I mean, I don't know how long it took before the media started vilifying parents putting their kids in front of the TV, but I
Hmm.
know that's where I was. Mom would talk about that I would be put in front of the TV, and then while she did house chores, just like you're saying, and um and she knew when a particular commercial came on. It was like a coffee commercial. It was like the coffee cups or something, or coffee tins with legs sticking out the bottom. And even as
The
a tiny baby, something about that just freaked me right the fuck out. And so she said she knew when that commercial came on because I'd start screaming from the other room.
Yeah, and I don't
That's
think
random.
having kids watching TV is entirely bad too. I mean, if we're just talking an entertainment perspective, I feel like there's enough shows that are educational for kids. They're learning things. Even movies that I would watch as a kid, certain details they stuck out, and I remembered them because I saw them in a movie.
We were raised on Mr. Rogers and Sesame Street, which I
Yeah.
have never felt like was a problem.
Hmm.
Um, the content makes the difference every time. So like all of our, oh, TV's bad, and then making parents feel bad for having one or having, well, now it's phones, right? We're doing all the same headlines we did with TV. Now we're doing with iPads and phones. But
Yeah.
but yeah, it's like if you're connected with your kiddo through that process, like this is a thing that exists in their world. Like they're gonna have to know how to handle it. So just removing it is setting them up to have no impulse control when it comes to them later in life, you know?
Yeah. Well, when did the TV get taken out of our household? I must have been 15, 16, because our father went to Brother Stare and he forbid TVs in the house.
That's
We were both
right.
teenagers.
Yeah, by that token, it's interesting to realize that Armstrong didn't really seem to speak against the TV, but also it wasn't the
He
same.
also had the World Tomorrow program on there. So why would he tell people to get rid of a TV where his very own program is on it?
Very good point. Very good point. Okay, I'm going to read a little bit more about this. Okay. Meanwhile, many fathers and mothers spend a minimum amount of time and effort maintaining direct contact with their children, and then they wonder why their children do not turn out as they would like them to. Okay, I'm just going to say that's problematic right there. Like the idea of I'm going to have a child because I want them to turn out in this particular way, or I'm going to have a child because they need to fulfill my needs in these categories is gross.
I feel
Um,
like that's a lot of parents, Pat.
yes, I mean, I think there are many, many people who have a child because then there's someone who has to love them,
Hear them
and
when
I
they get
can't
old
blame
and
those people. Like
crusty.
those people are hurting, and that's why they're doing that. It's the autonomy. Like I cannot imagine bringing a child into this world just so I could cram them into a fucking box. There was this song when I was in college by a band called Creed, which they were kind of like walking the line of Christian music, not Christian music.
I remember
Um,
that.
it was called Arms Wide Open, and I'm gonna cry if I sing it too much. But it's like, with arms wide open under the sunlight, welcome to this place. I'll show you everything. So, as I understand it, the song was something he wrote after he found out that his wife was pregnant. I guess by then I had left behind the doomsday stuff a bit, and I thought the world was cool and I had a lot of hope for it
Yeah.
because I'd let go of doomsday somewhat. And and that was how I thought of it. I thought it was really beautiful. The idea of wouldn't I bringing a child into this, I would be excited to show them.
Let them live their lives how they want to. Not having kids because you had things that you wanted to do in life but didn't, and you try to live that through your children, but genuinely having children so that they could experience all this for themselves and make their own decisions and have their own desires and pursue what they want to pursue.
And that is what I did. But I think you're not too far off with that idea though of like fulfilling my own childhood. Like I don't think it was in a gross way, but I felt like it was my opportunity to fully take the lid off curiosity and creativity,
Hmm.
and let myself um see the world as they saw it.
So in a way, you could kind of reshape your own childhood through your own kids, right? See the world through their eyes. Isn't that incredible? They never had to experience the world through your eyes as a child and
But I
experience
think that's the beauty of
doomsday.
children. I think that's the beauty of children, that we can see the world with fresh eyes. We
Mhm.
can let go of our jadedness and be like, well, what do they see? What are they going to see now? If I didn't have my bullshit, what would I see if I was just looking at the world and learning from it? Because the bullshit I was taught wasn't real. And so I went out and explored reality and showed it to them as I learned it.
Do you raise your kids in a way that you feel like you wished you had been raised?
Yes.
Yeah.
I did it very intentionally.
Yeah. Well,
But
just look at
it,
our parents and, take very few good things from it because there were some good things. Um, but anything that was harmful, you were able to extract that, get rid of it, and you didn't pass that on to your children, making you a legit cycle breaker, pets. It was
I
like
mean,
starting over for you too, you know?
yeah, I mean, I hope so. The thing is I can't see what I don't see, so who knows what crap I perpetuated forward, but that's okay. That's how it was always going to be. You can only break what you can see. So that makes me think of this James Baldwin quote that I love. I don't think it was necessarily intended to be about child rearing. I think it was more about race to start. But I think it applies. He says, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's faced.
Oh, yes.
Thank you, James Baldwin.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's good.
Right? Like if I'm going to be in denial about the bullshit that was perpetuated on me in my childhood, in my autonomy, whether it's my mental autonomy, being able to see the world as it actually is versus through the filter of a fairy tale, if it is my right to not be hit as a child, like those are the things that I am paying attention to. And I am considering and recognizing I didn't want them to be like that for my kids. And so those are the things that I changed. We need to be giving kids so much more autonomy when it comes to how they spend their time. And if there is one thing that I would say is the crux of my philosophy, I've not like refined this, but my philosophy on child rearing, it is give them autonomy and space and freedom.
I don't want to downplay how awful COVID was. A lot of people lost their lives. It was a terrible time. Marriages ended. But on a small positive note, I feel like a lot of people came into their own during that time period. When COVID hit, all of a sudden people were, forced indoors, working a lot less at maybe jobs that they didn't like, that didn't bring them any satisfaction. And they found their own creativity. They discovered things about themselves that they really didn't have time to focus on, or something that they kind of brushed off to the side because they're just so busy working. They're just trying to get through day to day, work that 9 to 5, go home with some takeout, or maybe make a meal if you have time, but and then watch TV until you fall asleep. But when COVID hit and they had more time to be at home, all of a sudden they started discovering things about themselves. And I feel like a lot of people maybe started podcasts, and they did more artsy things. And during COVID, I wrote a fucking book. Yeah, would I have done that before? Probably not. Because I had time to just be indoors, and just like our minds have to go somewhere. We're always, I think for the most part, people do want to accomplish things. They want to feel like they're contributing to society, not just being told to do this, do that. It gets exhausting, just mentally exhausting, in my opinion. So when you have that time, yeah, you discover things about yourself. But it's so hard to do that. Tap into who you are when you are working that 9 to 5 job, when all you are is just a worker for corporate America. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that necessarily either, but I feel like a lot of people give up on their dreams because they're just trying to put food on the table. Society, the way it's shaped, doesn't allow us to really be anything else. It's very hard to do so. Artists, I wish we had more artists and less politicians. I know that's a quote from somewhere, but I think that's what we need. We need more people to contribute things like that, not fill the billionaires' bank accounts.
Well, no wonder the artist is being squeezed out of us a little bit. When we're looking just to survive, we don't have that contemplative space. And I think that's what the arts gives us is contemplation. And
Hmm.
yeah, if we're not in a place of privilege enough to be able to do that because we're just working so hard to scrape by, yeah, we do a great disservice to all of us. Because when any of us humans are in a place of just surviving, which
Hmm.
by the way, I know I'm saying that like if there's any, like holy shit, there's so fucking many and it's wrecking us, like it puts us in a place of not having our best selves available to us for that
Yeah.
day's tasks. So getting back to the plain truth here, and all of Armstrong's understanding child rearing, he says, the glory of young men, says the Bible, is their strength. One of the greatest problems in any society is the harnessing of the energy and vitality of its youth. It is also one of the greatest difficulties of parenthood. Johnny, please sit still. Stop jerking and jiggling, shouts the exasperated mother of a 10-year-old. What's the matter? She fumes. Can't you ever be still and quiet? Parents have been saying things like that for centuries. Have they, though? I would say I don't think so. I have a
Maybe
feeling,
during his time, Pats. Think
well,
about,
yeah,
he was
ever
born
since
in the,
puritanical bullshit and like during the time of children are to be seen and not heard, but I don't think that was how it always was. I think any little energy that kids had was usually directed to activities that helped the family, you know?
well, I mean,
Like
we were
Ivan,
talked to like that when we were in church.
I know, but I'm saying I don't think that that's been humanity's way. Anyway, he says, virtually all normal children are bundles of pent-up explosive energy, and that energy must be released. When it is bottled up, suppressed, and thwarted, it builds up pressure, incredible pressures in children. The longer energy is suppressed, the more frustrated the child becomes.
Sorry,
Have you
is he
ever,
talking about boys needing to blow their load?
I mean, it's kind of the same conversation, isn't it? Have you ever experienced this? You are driving along the freeway or motorway. It's an extended trip of several hours. There are a few stops for gasoline or rest stops. The
Mhm.
faces of the children in the back seat may be seen in the rearview mirror as they sit, squirm, struggle, wrestle, tussle, tug, and pull away at each other. Well, thank goodness, Herbie, we figured out phones. So that's not what happens anymore. Or iPads. We figured out iPads. So it's much less problematic now. Yay, technology. So they're talking about all of the how much longer? I have to go to the bathroom. So this is so like Every other commercial has this trope, I swear to God. Okay. The longer this agitation continues, the more irritable the parents become. After all, they would like a nice, quiet, relaxing trip. Before long, an explosion takes place. Okay, that also sounds like his other book, but I'm just going to move on.
That's what I'm saying.
I know, right?
Gross.
Sulk, pout, fume, resent. The atmosphere in the car has degenerated considerably since this trip began.
I
Simply
mean, nobody.
because he's not wrong about this part. Simply because the parents did not understand nor know how to cope with the factor of their children's energy. It's a law of nature. Energy must be released, must be burned up and utilized. Yet children often lack the wisdom to know how to rightly utilize their own vast energy reserves. We are told that a child left to himself brings shame to his mother. All right, that's from Proverbs 29:15. Children left to their own devices often use their energy in a destructive manner. Children left to their own
Oh,
devices just sit there now. Anyway, different thing.
left to their own devices.
Oh, he's going to get racist. This is one of
Okay.
the principal reasons why children cooped up and left alone in a big city environment often resort to acts of violence and vandalism. Children cut loose from the warm and creative environment of a close and loving family unit frequently become youthful vagrants prowling the streets and alleys of cities looking for destructive outlets for those pent-up energies. Such neglect on the part of parents is one of the key factors involved in the formation of adolescent street gangs. I'm sorry. He is speaking post-white flight. He is being racist there. It's like dog whistly.
Yep, that's pretty obvious.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. This is so long and wordy. It's like I want his bullet points of his bullcrap that he said. Discipline for wrong acts or attitudes should never involve verbal insults or degrading put-downs. It also should never involve punching or slapping in the face, strapping with a heavy belt, twisting arms, boxing or pulling ears, pinching, kicking, or hitting about vital organs. Oof. A small sapling can easily be trained to grow in the right direction, but once that sapling becomes a mature tree, it is not possible to change it. In a similar way, children can be trained when young, but there comes a time when parents may no longer be able to teach a child. Blah.
He did write this, by the way. He references the word sapling in his autobiography a lot.
So, we have talked in our spanking episode about not hitting in the face, and I suggested it was because people seeing marks on a kid's face makes them uncomfortable, but no one's looking at the ass, right? So I see nothing contradicting that. That seems like what he's saying also here is to not hit them in the face.
Yeah.
It's not child rearing, it's child coercing.
I do not envy you your role, Pats. But now that makes me curious. So like, okay, well, how do you discipline your children then?
I gave as much freedom as I could possibly give my kids. I I've always felt, and I have probably said this metaphor before, but I have felt that I'm just the sidelines of this life of theirs because I gave them their life to have it for them, right? I didn't give them life so that I would have someone to take care of me when I'm old. I didn't give them life so that I would have someone that had to be dependent on me and love me. I gave them life because I thought this world was cool and I wanted them to have, and I wanted to make more people that could enjoy it too because I thought it was that great. So it mattered to me that they got to be in charge of this life, that I could be the bumpers on their bowling lane. I wanted them to have as wide a space to explore as they could. I wanted them to know who they were, to know that they didn't have to give Auntie whoever a kiss if they didn't want to.
Hmm.
I wanted them to know that their body was theirs, their mind was theirs, and this world was not against them. This world was here for them to explore, engage in, contribute to, be a part of. We have this idea that kids are waiting to start their life, that we're preparing them for their life
No,
as
life is
if
now.
they're not living when they're kids,
Mhm.
and I do almost take issue with the fact that we put all the kids in boxes in schools all around us so that like we don't have to deal with them during the day. Like how would the world be different if all of us that live in this society like live together in this society? I think about this show from Japan. It's called Old Enough. It shows how the Japanese culture is just completely different when it comes to how they see children. They know that children are capable of so much more than, like, I would say Americans give them credit for. The society at large respects children and lets them do the things that they're capable of. So in this show, there was a child that I think was under 3 years old, or maybe just 3 years old. Um, and the parent had taken this child across this like busy street, even around this path to the store, and taught them how to gather things they needed at the store. So this tiny child goes out on his own, crosses this street, and like is aware of the traffic. And honestly, traffic seems to be aware of the child. Um, and as I understand it, this is just a cultural value. So this little guy's in the store and he can't reach something because he's 3. And, a worker in the store is like, oh, well, what do you need? And just treats him like a customer, grabs it and hands it to him. And the little guy takes his stuff up and checks out and walks home. Like,
Yeah. I've heard a lot of good things about Japanese culture over there. That, yeah, kids can just kind of walk around and everyone protects them.
yeah, in Japan, it's like the society at large embraces children as
Hmm.
as functioning members of it, and I think in America, for whatever reason, it's like we think they're just subhuman, which contributes to the problem of how we treat them in discipline. Kids who are allowed to explore and see the world and make their own decisions about it without being shoved in a box, like that's autonomy. So, I mean, ultimately, the most important thing, no matter what I could say about how I raised my kids, to me, the absolute most important thing is that they knew that they owned their bodies and that no one else had a right to do something to their body that they weren't okay with. And to me, that's the crux of bodily autonomy. It's the maybe the most important thing you can give to your child that you're raising is themselves and their knowledge that they own themselves. And that's the thing we keep coming back to in this series. So it's interesting though, Nancy, like we recognize that you and I kind of took literal opposite paths, with me having children and fully investing my life in the raising of those children for the last 15 years, and you deciding that you weren't going to have children. But it's interesting that what I notice about what we both did is that we centered autonomy in our decision, either direction, So autonomy in me raising children was what mattered.
Yeah.
Autonomy for you and your choice to not have children is what mattered. I mean, I think the most important takeaway maybe is the recognition that the choice to have children or not have children is a personal, autonomous choice that each
Yes.
person should be making for themselves. And obviously, in conjunction with a partner, if you choose that route as well.
Hmm. Yep.
Because ultimately, if we're talking about autonomy, to me, that suggests the idea that we get to create a life that works best for us.
Correct. Yes.
And when having a child is literally a lifelong commitment, damn straight you better have a choice in that.
Not for in-laws to decide, not the grandparents, but the individual.
Not for a church to decide.
Correct. Not for society to decide.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us for this potentially rambly episode where Nancy and I talked about our opposing decisions to not have children or to have them. We would love to hear from you, whether you had children or you are childless by choice. Please feel free to reach out and share your stories, especially if you grew up in a high control environment. How the heck did that affect you? Please feel free to share your stories with us in the comments. And in case you haven't heard, Nancy and I have started a Patreon. Follow the link in the description to become one of our sinful siblings. Catch us back here in 2 weeks for another installment of our bodily autonomy series. And this coming Friday, check us out on Unpack It TV, where Nancy and I react live to episodes of The World Tomorrow and other content from the Worldwide Church of God. Like and subscribe!
Like and subscribe.